How's everybody doing?
We're good after eating your good barbecue.
Yeah,
that
brisket
was
good.
Brisket was good.
I haven't really done this before, so be patient with me if you would. But tonight, I wanted to look at Psalms 90 and 91 and give you a little background on where we're at in here. You're most likely aware that the fourth book of the Pentateuch is known as Numbers, and the title in the Hebrew canon is Bimnabar, meaning in the wilderness. So, with the fourth book of the Pentateuch and the fourth book of Psalms, we find the same subject, and that's being a pilgrim in the wilderness. A wanderer. And sin has made the paradise of God a wilderness, and death has filled it with sorrow and sadness. And there's no hope for the earth, no hope for the nations of the earth, and no hope for creation apart from YHWH. The first and second books, which is Psalms 90 and 91, set forth and gives the keynote for the whole book. A little too far. All right. Happiness for the world will be found only when he whose right it is shall come again to reign and judge the world in righteousness, which is Yeshua. And in Yeshua, the coming King, not only Israel, but all the nations of the earth will be blessed. And this is the theme of the book. This fourth book consists of 17 Psalms, all of which are anonymous, but not all without titles, except for 90 and 91. They're clearly by Moses, and 101 and 108, which are David's. The Psalms 90 and 91 appear as one psalm in two parts written by Moses at the beginning of the 40 years. So you got to keep in mind that's it. the beginning before, so many things were tested and went south. So Psalms 91, on the other hand, it presents a contrast to those under the shadow of the Almighty and the deliverance of Israel in the wilderness from the causes of death and the countless condemned thousands that are mentioned in chapter 90. And this psalm was written for the comfort of the surviving Israelites in the wilderness during the 40 years. And by the survivor ones, those are the ones that were born after the Yahweh said, none of you guys are going to make it, So, all right. Towards the close, many have been cut off by the various agencies and hardships named in chapter 91, and these are the terror by night, arrows that flieth by day, the pestilence in darkness, and the destruction at noonday. And this is really militaristic because this is Kateb, which is H6986, and that's a sudden attack or ruin, like you're being attacked, and you don't expect to be attacked by an army at noon. It's just everything's out of whack. And then there's the lion and the adder. But from all these, trusters would be delivered, and those would see in their eyes the reward of the wicked, with thousands dying, and yet nothing is permitted to assail them. And we think of those verses as we pertain to the days of Moses, and we can see how they would apply to our lives today. But first, let's look at how the children of Israel failed in the pilgrimage, for the going to the promised land. Because we're all on a pilgrimage to the promised land, every one of us, we're daily taking steps forward to try to please Yahweh. But because we're on a pilgrimage to this promised land, lacking faith before the crossing of the Red Sea, then, hey, God provided the miracle to separate the Red Sea. Israel went through. The walls collapsed on the Egyptian soldiers, killed them. They saw that miracle. How fast could you forget that? Yeah, and then they're complaining about bitter water at Marah, so God made the water sweet. And then they're complaining in the desert of sin, and the Israelites wished God had killed them in Egypt, where they could eat all the bread and be full rather than starving in the desert. So God rained manna from heaven. All you had to do, go outside 5 of those days, pick up what you needed for the day. On the 6th day, you could pick up a double portion. So you could maintain the Sabbath. But they were collecting more manna than they were supposed to, and they were only to gather what they could eat for the night, with the exception of the day before the Sabbath, like I just said. But instead, they tried to hoard the manna and keep more than they needed overnight, and the manna didn't keep, but it got, gelatinous and full of worms, and it stank. But attempting to collect manna on the Sabbath, which, you're not supposed to, he told them don't to collect double the day before. But some tried to go out on the Sabbath, and there was none to gather because, God didn't provide it, because he had made provisions the day before for you to have what you needed. But God was grieved with them, again, for breaking his commandments and laws. And it kind of reminds me of the virgins waiting for the bridegroom to arrive, because they weren't prepared. And then when they tried to get prepared and go to, get what they needed, their oil in the 10 virgins cases, but it was too late. When the doors closed, the doors closed. But when they were complaining over the lack of water at Rephidim, the water came out of a rock at Mount Horeb, and Yahweh told Moses to strike it with a staff. Well, you're not going to forget that. I'm not going to forget that. Hey, this guy hit that rock with a stick. We got wonderful spring water. You just don't forget. But, then they began engaging in idolatry and the golden calf incident. They were complaining at Tebrah that God sent fire to destroy them, but Moses prayed for the people, and God spared them again. But complaining over the lack of food and not having meat to eat, although the Lord gave them manna, God provided quail for them. But they failed to trust God and enter into the promised land. And spies were sent out to survey the promised land that God had already promised them. But no, they want to go send some spies to see if they agree with God, that they can take the land. But only 2 came back saying, yes, with God, we can take this land. But it should have been everyone that went. Well, they shouldn't have went because God promised it to them. They should have went and got it. But anyway, in Numbers 14:21-23, the Lord declares, but as truly as I live, all the earth shall be filled with the glory of the Lord, because all those men which have seen my glory and my miracles, which I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, and have tempted me now these 10 times, and have not hearkened to my voice, surely they shall not see the land which I swear unto their fathers, neither shall any of them that provoked me see it. So this is when, hey, y'all ain't making it. But, we're going to continue on because the tribe will populate. But it's important to note that the number 10 in biblical numerics signifies the completeness and divine order and the perfection of God's will. So what was the root of the failings of those in the wilderness? It was the self. They had selfish desires and lusts, idolatry, with the calf, and fear. And anytime, we think we admonish or lust after self and the desires of the flesh, we condemn ourselves before the Lord because He's our provider. Proverbs 25:27-28. So for men to search their own glory is not glory. He that hath no rule over his own spirit, meaning self-control, is like a city that the walls are broken down, and without walls, there's no protection, and no protection from Yahweh, because you're trying to carry the load that God willingly carries for us. Proverbs 25:27-28. Oh, just read that. Apologize. 1 Peter 1:13. Wherefore, gird up the loins of your mind. Be sober. And that means to be discreet, be sober, and watch. To be sober. And hope to the end of the grace that is to be brought unto you at the revelation of Yeshua Jesus Christ. And, when you gird up your loins, men wore skirts in that day, but they had a sash or a belt, and to gird up their loins, they would reach under, pull up from behind, tuck it into their belt. They're ready to fight. So you got to stay prepared to fight the fight. 2 Timothy 1:7, for God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind, which is self-control. Those are things that, the Lord can provide for us. Could someone please read Philippians 2:2-3? Philippians 2, verse 2 and 3.
Complete my joy by being in one accord and one love and one soul and one mind, doing nothing according to strife or self-glory, but in humility let each regard his neighbor as better than himself.
Yes. Okay, and then in Luke 22:42, when Yeshua is faced with death on the cross, knowing as he did all that would befall him, he still prayed, not my will, but yours be done. And the hardest prayer you can pray, especially when you're hurting or family members hurting, or there's a really strong issue, the hardest prayer to pray is not what you want, but praying for God's will. because God's always choosing better for us than what we can do. So, but if somebody could read Psalms 90, please.
Psalms 90, starting at verse 1.
Yeah.
There you go. Lord, thou hast been our dwelling place in all generations. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever thou hast formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, thou art Yahweh. Thou turnest man to destruction, and sayest, Return, you children of men. For 1,000 years is in thy sight, are but as yesterday when it is past. And as a witch in the night, thou carriest away as with a flood. They are as asleep. In the morning they are like grass which groweth up. In the morning it flourisheth and groweth up. In the evening it is cut down and withereth. For we are consumed by thine anger, and by thy wrath we are troubled. Thou hast set our iniquities before thee, our secret sins in the light of thy countenance. For all our days are passed away with thy wrath. We spend our years as a tale that is old. The days of our years are 80 years and 10. And if by reason of strength they be 80 years, yet is their strength labor and sorrow, for it is soon cut off, and we fly away. Who knoweth the power of thine anger? Even according to thy fear, so is thy wrath. So teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. Return, O Yahweh, how long? And let it repent thee concerning thy servants. Satisfy us early with thy mercy, that we may rejoice and be glad all of our days. Make us glad according to the days wherein thou hast afflicted us, and the years wherein we have seen evil. Let thy work appear unto thy servants, and thy glory unto their children. And let the beauty of the Lord our Elohim be upon us, and establish thou the work of our hands upon us. Yea, the work of our hands, establish thou it.
Okay, so learned in Psalms 90, it shows a man condemned by God, never to see the promised land that he had labored to see and led men to see. Yet even knowing that he will die in the wilderness, he asks God to help them rejoice in their afflictions and prays for God's coming to be quick and merciful. So just even though he knows he's not going to make it, he's still, asking for God's perfection and protection of the people. In Psalms 91, 1 through 9, yes, if you would, please.
He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in him will I trust. Surely he shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler, and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with his feathers, and under his wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. Only with thine eyes shalt thou behold and see the reward of the wicked, because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation.
Thank you. If you could hold your spot there'll be a little bit more coming. So Psalms 91:1, if we dwell in the secret place of the Most High, we will abide in the Almighty. First of all, the Most High is referencing the divine title Elyon. This is El and Elohim, but not as the creator, but as the possessor of heaven and earth. It's his. The Almighty is Hebrew for Shaddai, the bounty and the grace of God as our provider. Secondly, what is this secret place that we mentioned in chapter 90, verse 8? Moses first speaks of our secret, which in Hebrew is the word alam, or the veil from sight or to conceal. It's referring singularly of sin. But in chapter 91, verse 1, the secret place is the place of the Most High. It's called a secret because not all know the way to the Father. Okay. So if we're living in sin, as Moses was speaking of in chapter 90, then the veil is surrounding us and we're unable to abide in the Almighty because we've been shielded. We will not receive his bounty or grace. But let's discuss this a little bit further. And we know that the way to the Father is by the truth and the light, and the truth being the word of YHWH and the light being Yeshua, Jesus. And if we live in Yeshua, we live in the Father. So if we are following the law and the commandments of YHWH, we study and we know his word and we live in the light of Yeshua, then we know the secret of abiding in the Almighty. And we can see that link both between verse 1 and verse 2 of chapter 91 is a conditional one, but we must abide in the Most High to receive the bounty, the grace, the protection from the Almighty. And when we see these words repeated in verse 9 for emphasis, after discussing all that can befall those that do not abide in the Almighty, not only are we to keep God's commandments and his law, but as in John 14:6, Yeshua tells us that no one comes to the Father except through me. He's the door. And somebody please read 1 John 4:12-15.
Who wants to read? I'll bring you a microphone.
Somebody got it?
You gonna read it?
through 15.
Yes, please.
No one has seen Elohim at any time. If we love one another, Elohim does stay in us, and his love has been perfected in us. By this we know that we stay in him and he in us, because he has given us of his Spirit. And we have seen and bear witness that the Father has sent the Son, Savior of the world. Whoever confesses that Yeshua is the Son of Elohim, Elohim stays in him and he in Elohim.
Okay, thank you. All right, back to Psalms 91, 2-4. This reassures us that if we abide with the Father, then he will be our refuge and our fortress. And the two words refuge and fortress, those suggest a militaristic nature. So refuge is the word 4268 in the Strong's and is makasha. I hope I did that okay. And it is a place of shelter and trust. And a fortress is word 4686 is Metsuda, meaning castle. It's a defense or a stronghold. So we will be abiding in God's fortress, armed with the word of the truth as our shield and our buckler. And this is the only place buckler is even used. This word is even used in the Bible. But there's two basic things that come about from buckler, and one is chainmail. It's chainmail. I'm sure y'all watch some sword fight movies. Guys had on chainmail or whatever. But the other is an all-encompassing shield. That is a shield that goes all the way around you and protects you from all sides. So pretty good to have God's
Huge,
buckler with us. And we will be impenetrable to all the terrors listed in verses 5-8. Those are all the, pestilence and stuff that we read earlier. But it's also militaristic in nature because we aren't going to be raptured away just as the war begins. We'll be in the thick of the battle. We're here as God's warriors to do whatever he needs us to do. But we need to read and study and put on the armor of God and trust that he will guide and protect us, by praying for his will to be done in our lives and in the lives of those we love and care for. But in Ephesians 6:13 through 17, we learn what makes up the full armor of God, which is in this instance where it says God, it means the revealed God. So we have the belt of truth, and that separates the believer from the world. The breastplate of righteousness, and that protects the heart from Satan's accusations. Shoes of the gospel of peace, and that prepares the believer to move forward and to step out on faith. The shield of faith is the faith that the Lord will be our hedge of protection. And the helmet of salvation protects the head, which is a seat of the mind, where we find the mark of God, which is God's name, his holy name, in our forehead. Sealed. We're sealed with his name. So 91, 5, and 8. Someone could read that. And don't worry, we're almost a quarter of the way done.
Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor the arrow that flieth by day, nor the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor the destruction that wasteth at noonday. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand. Did we already read this?
Yeah, we read that just a minute ago, but
Oh.
for emphasis, I wanted to read it again.
Oh, okay.
So,
I was just
as in the end of days, we're shown a listing of many horrible things that may have already befallen those that were condemned to wait out their days in the wilderness with Moses. But as we are also reminded in other scriptures, we will see the same atrocities in the end days, and which I kind of think we're in there very close anyway. And in Matthew 24:21, Jesus gives us a glimpse into the end of the days, and he states that there shall be a great tribulation, such as was not seen since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall there be. But we don't need to feel complacent because we live in America either. And, don't let this fill you with a false sense of safety and security, because our only safety is in Yeshua. And Jesus tells us in Matthew 24 that we will see the wars, nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom, famines, pestilences like epidemics and contagions, and earthquakes. And these are only the beginning of the sorrows. Do not delude yourself that these things will only occur in other lands. While you watch, all the activity safely on your TV, you must be prepared, mentally, spiritually, physically prepared. But what if all these things happened all at once right here in our own country? What if nations attacked us on the ground or with weapons of destruction or infiltration? What if we couldn't buy food, gas, or supplies? This is what Psalms 90 and 91 is talking about. They're not telling us that we will avoid seeing these things or that we will not be among the chaos, but it's telling us that God, YHWH, is with us and will never forsake us as long as we put our trust and faith in him. And that if we keep his law and his commandments, that we will abide with him and he will protect us. And we must be faithful even unto death. He does not promise us that we will not die, but we must be faithful unto death. Don't be afraid of these things of the world that can kill our bodies, but rather fear him that is able to destroy both the soul and the body in hell, like it says in Matthew 10:28. So, that's it. I hope that I was able to get the message across, and I'm just so thankful to be here.
Glad to have you, Mo. That was awesome. We appreciate you putting that together for us. That was well put together.